Beyond the world of Marvel, DC, and Star Wars lies another franchise called Star Trek. It may not have been as popular as the rest of these franchises, but if you're ever in need of a space adventure, Star Trek will never disappoint. No matter how many times it gets rebooted, fans will be there to watch. In today's video, let's catch you up with some updates regarding the fourth film in the latest attempt from J.J. Abrams. First up, Zoe Saldana's concerns regarding the next phase. Zoe Saldana shares the same concerns that Star Trek fans do. Things haven't been looking pretty on Paramount Pictures' side of the story. Fans have been waiting for a fourth film for the longest time, and then the studio gave them amazing news when Star Trek 4 was officially announced. The movie was scheduled for next year, but then things took a turn when the director, Matt Shakman, jumped ship. Oh, and guess what? He went on to work on Marvel's Fantastic Four instead. Not Marvel ruining things for other people once again. Anyway, ever since the new development, the franchise was indefinitely delayed in September once Shakman decided to leave. Now we've got no place to go and cry for that fourth film that we were so excited about and haven't yet gotten. Saldana, on the other hand, too feels like there's a definite need for the fourth film and the stories that it has to cover. What's cooking up? Moving on, is Saldana up for the job again? Ever since Star Trek 4 was announced back in February 2022, Saldana, among other cast members, has been excited to return to her role as Uhura, and although their excitement was pretty visible, they lack confidence while talking about it. There's no doubt that the cast would be more than happy to work together again, but what bothers them is the fact that there would obviously be delays owing to scheduling issues and a change in director. Saldana was the only cast member who hadn't said a word yet about returning to Star Trek, but she was put on the spot recently on Deadline's 20 Questions podcast, and she had to comply. She confidently conveyed her co-star's statements regarding the new project, but she thinks that the project was not just being delayed because of scheduling, but also other factors as well. She didn't mention what these reasons were, or could be, but she made it clear that they did exist. In addition to that, she also mentioned talking to J.J. Abrams about this entire thing, and that's where she got the hint. But not to forget that she's more than happy to return and says that everyone involved with the film is on the same page. Well then, what's the holdup? Coming up, what's the problem basically? Are we getting the fourth film or not? Saldana obviously didn't want to headline the news, so she refrained from disclosing the reasons for the delay. But we still have some ideas of our own. For starters, when Matt Shakman exited in August, there was no way the film could stay on schedule. And just so you know, just before the director decided to leave us in the dark, Chris Pine too had shown enthusiasm to once again play Captain Kirk. How sad is that? Although he did say that he was still waiting for a script. Plus, Pine also revealed how he tried talking to the upper management about how they shouldn't see the next movie through the same lens that Marvel's blockbusters are seen. To be honest, that's a pretty honest and realistic approach to making a great movie. And it also reveals another reason why the movie is facing delays. The studio is trying to one-up itself and trying to compete with the likes of Marvel. And that's not all. The studio is also going through a bit of a reshuffle for its own schedule, in addition to its Star Trek franchise. That ought to mess things up with almost all their projects. Following up, what's something that would pull audiences back for Star Trek? There's no denying that Paramount Pictures has faced a bit of a problem in making a profit for the Star Trek movies, not just in their latest reboot, but ever since it first launched back in 1979. We can't say much about why things weren't so profitable back in the day, but if we had to assess the Kelvin timeline, we'd say that it's got to do with the imbalance between the scale of the movies and the budget for them. Right now, both those things are soaring high. At least that's the case for the previous movies. To counter that, there's a simple solution. They need to find the right balance between the budget and the scale of the films. Better said than done, right? Up next, let's compare the fan base. Of course, we're in no position to make such a call, but hey, we agree with what Matt Pine said. You can't just hope to compete with Marvel. Sure, you can build towards it, but you can't just force your movies to be as popular as the competition just by throwing money at them. It's a little too ambitious. Star Trek's got a very strong fan base. Yes, it's not as massive as Marvel's, DC's, or even Star Wars, but it does have one, and a pretty solid one. Maybe try entertaining them, and you'll get your share. But moving on from that, there's a whole array of storylines that can still be explored. One of these is the versus Borg story. What about that, right? Do you realize how many fans would jump back into the cinemas to see Kirk fight the Borg? That's actually another opportunity to tap into the niche fan base. We'll talk about that later on. Finally, Star Trek has no release date yet. The crux of this entire debate is rather sad. You can debate all you want, but at the end of the day, you got nothing to look forward to. There's no release date yet, announcing the project is a completely different story. In fact, whatever hope we had for the project was taken away when Paramount decided to backtrack on their fourth film's announcement. It's annoying, to say the least. The studio should have at least given an update, even if it wasn't all that great, you know? It's better than making things up by yourself, or just hanging in the middle of knowing nothing's coming your way. You get it, right? Moving on to how Star Trek IV is the only way Kirk will be able to fight the Borg. Starting off with an abandoned idea. If you're strong enough to look past the fact that we have no official release date for the film yet, then let's talk about the story, shall we? The Starship Enterprise has never really fought the Borg in the Kelvin timeline, and while the producers look for a new director, we can predict if a versus Borg would ever happen. For starters, it can't happen in the Prime timeline because the Borg don't make contact with the Alpha Quadrant till the 24th century. So we then look forward to the Kelvin timeline. This is because, in the Kelvin timeline, things can happen much sooner than expected or as the movie's story demands. An example of this is the arrival of Khan in Star Trek Into Darkness, which happened way before it was intended in the Star Trek original series. Next up, here's how Borg could make an entry into the Kelvin timeline. Star Trek First Contact and Star Trek Enterprise left room for the entrance of Borg in the Kelvin series. Borg traveled to the 21st century in First Contact, and in the Enterprise, it turns out that some of these hive mind slaves crashed in the Arctic and came online. In the process, they killed humans and tried to return to the Delta Quadrant. While Captain Jonathan Archer was able to intercept them, he didn't know they were the Borg and that they had already sent a signal to the Delta Quadrant. Lucky for us, Star Trek Enterprise connects to both the Prime and Kelvin timelines, so it could be argued that the signal sent by the Borg triggered something in the Delta Quadrant, or maybe Captain Jonathan Archer was unable to kill all the Borg. There are a ton of possibilities that could be played for Star Trek IV. It just needs a proper team and effort. Finally, a battle between the Borg and Kirk would be legendary. Captain Kirk fighting the Borg has an inexplicable appeal to it. Maybe it's got to do with the fact that the Borg is one of the strongest villains in the Star Trek series, yet it hasn't been explored yet in the latest movies. There's nothing that tops the Borg, and J.J. Abrams' villain-dependent movies could highly benefit from this. It's true though, Borg would have to technically be redesigned to better fit the newer movies, but that shouldn't be a problem. After all, they'd remained the same for over 30 years now, so that shakeup could be more needed than wanted. Not to forget, if there's anything that could make the Star Trek franchise get anywhere close to the type of success Star Wars or Marvel has, the Borg arc is their best shot. That's a wrap for this video. When do you think we can expect the fourth film? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.